Welcome back to another episode of Prepper Talk Radio, radio for the ready-minded, where we focus on God, family, and country. We're super excited to be back with you and helping you be prepared and get ready and get good, strong, not just gear, but also the skill sets necessary to be able to survive anything that life throws at you. Today's episode is brought to you by Redback Strap, which is a rope alternative. We've got a special guest here with us today. His name is Josh Doan, and he's going to talk to us. He's an expert of sorts in rope and cordage. Now, I'm going to just, before we start, I'm going to tell you that having a rope in your pack is an essential item. You can't have a bug out bag or a bug in bag without having some kind of rope, something that you can use to tie things together or to lash things together. So having some kind of a rope is critical. And this rope is actually going to, I think I was impressed when I heard about it, when Josh was telling me about it at the Be Prepared Expo when we met. Again, another plug for going to events and meeting people and getting to grow your community and your network of preparedness people. Now, Josh, before we jump into the Redback Strap, I'd love to know a little bit about your background. I think I found that anybody who sells a product that can be used in the prepper world is also, I find that they're also a prepper themselves of sorts, at least. Do you consider yourself someone who's in the preparedness world, and what's your background and how did you get started with Redback Strap?
Yeah, absolutely. I consider myself part of the prepper world. I have a background in economics and business. I get a peek under the curtain when it comes to what's going on in the world, how fragile our just-in-time system is, the actual horrible components that go into what makes our economy up, the fiat system of our currency. There's 1,000 different ways that our current civilization could come crashing down around us, ranging from, situations with China, EMP, solar flares, currency collapses, different things to cause our government to turn against us, you name it. So there's a lot of different reasons why I'm in the prepper world. And I've been working for Redback here for almost a decade. And we've been providing material in the industrial sector for the past 20 years. And we've realized during that time that everybody was taking our strap home from the job site to use in hunting, camping, fishing, prep, and that sort of thing. And so we reformulated it a little bit. Because you need to formulate the strap to go with the securement method. And our industrial side, we use heavy-duty steel buckles, but on the prepping side, you want to be able to tie it by hand. And that's how we came out with the Redback strap and Redback rope.
Cool. Let me I guess set this up a little bit better. Paris started up with the setup. Is most of us preppers, we have paracord, right? Mm-hmm. This is kind of the staple. Use it for all kinds of things, lashing as well as shoelaces, right? And I still think this is something you need to have. And other things, smaller cordage. There's a lot of use for cordage. Nice little dispensers like this. If you're just listening, go ahead and jump on the YouTube video and you can kind of see what I'm showing here. All the way up to larger ropes, like these for mountaineering, for climbing, for caving. This is not what we're really talking about. We're not going to carry a big old rope like that in a bug out bag or a get home bag, or whatever you want to call it. This should absolutely be a staple in everybody's kits, a paracord. Now, do you know how to use it? That's a whole nother discussion, right? And what do you have it for in your bag? If you don't know how to use it, why do you have it in your bag? And what I found very interesting about this product is that it kind of, for me, it's filling a gap, right? I'm gonna get into this and I'm gonna practice some more with this, but for me, it's filling a gap. A little bit of my experience. I've done a lot of climbing and caving, a lot of rope work, a lot of rigging. And so the bigger ropes are more familiar to me. So we use a lot of webbing in climbing for rigging, for protection and so forth. So, but that's really a different product than what Josh is talking about here. And I'm seeing where this will fit in with my overall preparedness, right? I can see where I can throw this in my bug out bag, where I throw it in my truck, and have multiple uses. But I won't hog any more time because I just wanted to set it up a little bit more, because ropes are so exciting to most people, right? I mean, this is going to be a boring topic. People are probably saying, what? And they're just clicking off. So don't do that just yet, right? Because this is probably really more important than just talking about, oh, look at this string I've got here. Look how cool it is. No, it has a lot more uses. And if you are a true prepper, and if you're into bushcraft, and that you'll really understand the reason to have some cordage with you of some sort. So I'll shut up.
No, thank you very much, Shane. That's excellent, because that's true. You got to have. I actually did. It was kind of fun. I got a chance. I'm part of the youth group, the leadership of the youth group here at our local church, and I took the boys to my backyard. We had some s'mores afterwards, but before I taught them different knots, and it was amazing to me how these kids. Like, I grew up when I was in the Boy Scouts when I grew up, and one of the rules at our camp house was you have to tie 10 knots before you can eat breakfast. Like, and the first person to tie 10 knots got breakfast first. And I was like, bro, I'm telling you, I learned my knots. Like, I was going to eat first. I usually ate, and then I went back and helped all the other kids who didn't quite get their 10 knots. And so I taught these kids 3 or 4 knots because that's all the time we had, because it was taking so long to try to figure it out. But learning how to tie knots is critical. And I think this particular rope, right, Josh, is really designed to be able to tie knots and keep the strength, but also make untying the knot. Because once you tie a knot, sometimes you got to have to use that rope again for a different purpose, and untying the knot is a critical part of it. So tell us a little about Redback strap and how that all integrates into the prepper world.
Yeah. So what you mentioned, how it's easy to tie and untie, is a critical component of this, because it's a high strength 2,200 pound strap that replaces everything from paracord to trucker's rope. Like you said, it's easier to tie, because if you had a 2,200 pound trucker's rope, that you wouldn't be able to tie a knot like that. Plus, it's easier to untie. And that you may have noticed this in the climbing world that you were talking about a minute ago, that climbers like flat materials because they hold a knot, but you can also untie them as well.
Even after you fall on it and put a tremendous amount of weight on it, it can be difficult, but you can still get it undone. And as well as that wider strap tends to have it tends to be stronger when tied in a knot, right? When you tie a knot, you're making a weak spot, but the wider straps, because it has more surface area as well, it's gonna hold itself better in the knot. And it's gonna, like I say, be easier to untie because you have more surface area. Whereas if you're tying and put a lot of weight on paracord, you might as well just cut the thing.
Right. And this has 2,200 pounds of strength, which is equivalent to a heavy duty trucker's rope. And if you had a big rope like that, it'd be bigger than your thumb. And so it'd be really hard to manage and tie. So actually getting the right knot you need in the right situation can be very difficult. It also has lower elongation, so it's not going to stretch out on you when you're trying to string something up, especially like a food bag in a tree or something like that, or when you're trying to pull something heavy. Also, something we mentioned before we started recording is that most people don't realize that when you're tying something up, you actually lose up to 50% of your strength of your rope product when you make that knot. And that applies to all types of rope and strapping. So if you want to have 1,000 pounds of strength, you're going to need to start with something really strong, like 2,200 pounds. And to give you an idea, this is 4 times the strength of type 3 paracord and 3 times the strength of type 4 paracord. And it is resistant to all weather, which paracord isn't. Paracord actually loses strength when it gets wet. Not a lot of people know that that's a fundamental component of nylon. And it's also UV resistant, so it's not going to break down in the sunlight. And some people actually, they use it to string up temporary fences and such like that when they're trying to keep their cattle in. So there's a huge number of uses that you can put this to. Basically, if it's a rope or cordage type application, this is in most cases a superior alternative to the rope and cordage out there.
And another thing I like about cordage over rope or excuse me, a strap over cordage, I mean, just so you can see how this is wrapped up. You find the end, you pull it out, it's immediately all tangled up in a freaking knot. It's a bear to manage. Cordage and rope in particular takes a lot. Whereas with strap, there are certain ways that you can put that like a daisy chain, or like you say in your little dispenser you got there, and it's much easier to manage than any thin cordage or paracord, where just you have to know how to manage. You got to wrap it up, you got to cinch it up, you got to really manage it. Otherwise, it's just like Christmas tree lights, right? You unravel it and it's a mess, and it takes forever to unravel it.
I think he actually has one of our 50-footer packs, which are perfect for the bug out bags.
He's got one.
Yeah, I got that one here. Let me show the so you don't right now from what Josh and I have been talking earlier, and they don't have a website yet. So we're gonna just show you the Amazon store. We're going to create a link in the description below for you to pick up and order any of these cords or these straps. But let me show you real quick what it looks like. So here's the, here we go. So this is the Redback strap on the, if you're listening, you want to jump in at around 10 minutes on our YouTube channel. So you can see that the, So what's really cool is that if you look, it actually has the ability to be dispensed from the bottom of the box. I think you guys made that box like that on purpose, didn't you?
We did. We intentionally made it so you can dispense it from the box. And one of the nice things about a flat rope material like this is you can wind it up and it takes the exact same amount of space up again. Whereas if you use paracord, a lot of times it's really hard to get that put back in your pack without it becoming a big spaghetti mess.
Mm-hmm.
And so this, while a lot of people might have a nice, organized bug out bag when they start trying to get home or whatever they're trying to do. And if they're not used to hiking every day, they'll end up with a huge mess of a pack by the time they get to their destination. And this allows them to have at least one of those elements a little more controlled. In addition to having the 50 footers there, we actually have 200-foot dispenser buckets. And these are self dispensers, no tangle buckets, where you just grab it and you pull it out of the top, and you can keep pulling as long as you want and cut off whatever you need, and you're good to go.
That's awesome.
It's actually pretty easy just to stick fit back in if you decide.
And that's also on the they also sell that one on Amazon as well. There'll be a link in the description below for both of those.
Right.
Yeah, it seems like the perfect solution for my rig. Put it in the truck.
And I don't want your listeners and viewers to get confused. We do actually have a website right now. It's just for the industrial side that we've had for the past 20 years. So if they went there looking for Redback strap and Redback rope, they would be a little confused because everything is geared towards telling people why it's superior to steel banding. Because our industrial side is to replace steel banding. It's safer, it's stronger, it's less expensive, got better impact resistance, not going to cut people's hands like steel banding does. Pretty much the entire lumber and scaffolding industry have switched over, and a lot of other industries are in the process, like crating and galvanizing and people like that. Pretty much all the different areas that use it. It's just a matter of knowledge in those fields. They're like, oh, what are they using over there in lumber? And they see us, which is how we actually came out with this product, because everybody was using it, taking it home from the job site to use in their own projects, hunting, camping, fishing, prepping. And so we realized if they're willing to take it home and steal it, they might be willing to buy it.
It sounds like the switch that the off-road recovery industry has made from wire rope over to synthetic rope, right? So when you've got wire rope stretched out and you can't yank with it. You're just doing a static pull with it, right? But still loading that wire rope can be dangerous if something fails in that system.
Right.
Whereas with a polyester type rope or nylon or whatever, if it fails, it loses its energy and falls to the ground. It doesn't. Some of these recovery ropes have known to actually kill people when something fails in the system and it hits someone. Whereas a nylon, something that has some stretch to it, which I know these don't have a lot of stretch to them, but it will lose its rebound, will lose that energy that's all tied up in a recovery or whatever it's being used. So it's a lot safer that way than
You'll notice anybody who works in like the lumber industry or construction, they probably have a scar or two from that steel banding explosively coming off the load and getting them on the arms or forearms. Especially if you're putting the steel banding on, you probably have scars on your arms like that. And people who are unfamiliar with woven and composite don't know that that's an unnecessary liability. I've had lots of situations where people switched simply because of the lower liability. They weren't even thinking about the higher strength or the lower cost that woven and composite is. They were just thinking, we got to get this liability out of the yard.
Yeah, I remember cutting straps. You just back up, you stand back, you got some gloves on, you snip that thing and let it blow. Make sure you're clear. I've done that plenty of times before.
Sometimes if you have a real tight packer, you get to the end and the guy just takes a hammer and smacks it as he goes down, and that impact can cause it to explosively shatter. And so you'll see a guy with a hammer just bam,
break it,
bam,
yeah. Rather than cut it, just smack it.
Yeah,
the impact. Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the powerful things on this is you were telling me that you guys put this rope to the test on some towing and some different uses that way. Tell us a little bit about those tests that you've done and how you were able to match some of the higher strength ropes, even using, knots and tying it to between. Did you say that you tied it between two vehicles and did a test that way, or was it some other test that you did? I remember there's something that. Was there a video of a guy on an ATV?
Yeah. So
whipping a log around, like I remember something like that. Maybe we can have a link to that on our description. But tell us a little about that.
Or we could splice it into this video. Our intro on the retail side has a bunch of different applications that it can be used for, and one of the videos that we use is one of our guys on an ATV hauling a big old huge log with it. And he's just whipping it around, flinging it around the yard and everything like that. And he was pulling it around. I mean, this had to be, 1,000 pound log. I mean, it was a big old honking thing. And he was pulling it around for almost like 45 minutes. And it only broke after rolling around that long. And the reason it broke wasn't because the strap snapped, but because it was dragging along the ground, and the gravel on the ground slowly wore it away and finally just wore through the whole strap on the bottom.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Another thing I was thinking about, a strap versus a rope, right? When you're tying down a load on a trailer or whatever, you're not using a rope. I mean, truckers don't use ropes. Professionals don't use rope. They use straps, right? So if all you have is paracord and you're going to try and use that in a pinch, that's not it might work, but it's not a great option. And, we're not always in an emergency. We're not, so we don't always have to use the only thing we have on hand. We might as well get what is appropriate for our need. And a strap is something I definitely use a lot more often than rope, unless I'm rappelling, right? Unless I'm climbing or rappelling.
Well, and you can actually use all the traditional knots that you're used to. So like a trucker's knot, you can tie into this and get it to tighten down real nice.
Cool.
Does
I'm
it
gonna
keep
have to play around with it.
Does this strap keep its strength? I mean, you just mentioned most ropes lose 50%. Does this strap also have that same kind of concern, or is that why you started at 2,200 pounds to begin with?
That's why we started at 2,200 pounds, because it is part of the intrinsic nature of rope and strap. Once you tie a knot, you will lose up to 50%. I'm not guaranteeing that you're losing 50%. So it depends on the type of knot, the material, how you're yanking on it, that sort of thing. But you want to start with something very strong and something that maintains its strength as you're using it, as you're reusing it, as you're untying it. And that's really the critical difference. Is this material is designed to be really durable. It's an industrial grade product that we have brought into the retail space and the survival space. So it's designed to be in rough and tumble, down in the mud and dirt. On our industrial side, one part of our intro video is all these different giant loads of different things falling and smacking into the ground and the strap staying on it. Of course, that's with a buckle, but we use this material for the big giant house packs when they got them all loaded up, all the different types of lumber and trusses and things like that. And then they just tilt up and let the whole thing just slide and slam into the ground. And if it can survive that, it can survive most things you're going to put it through out in the survival and homesteading world. And that's actually where we had even better of a response than at the prepper communities. And don't get me wrong, we have tons of survival shops and military surplus bringing this stuff on in. It's very popular, especially the 50 footers, but the homesteading community. Mm-hmm. We went to the homestead conference in Coeur d'Alene, and I sold out of the 200-foot buckets in 3 hours.
Wow.
Nice.
2-day event out in 3 hours.
Holy smokes. What were they telling you was their main purpose for it?
A lot of people were just going to be using it for general homestead applications, tying things, hauling things, pulling things out of the forest. Temporary fences was a huge one that people kept on bringing up. We've actually noticed that cows and other livestock shy away from it. And at first we were thinking, it's because, it's white. It looks like that, it looks like the same material as electric fence.
Yeah.
None of the cattle that we had tested it on had ever had any experience with the white ribbon electric fence. They were all just the wire electric fences. So apparently there is something inherent about the way this catches the wind that the cattle are like, I don't know what that is. I'm not dealing with that.
That's crazy.
Are you going to make it in different colors? Because that would be definitely be more appropriate for, I guess, a bug out bag, something like camo or darker colors that not easily seen, or maybe bright orange.
Well, since this is new to the market, the retail version, we're a little bit like Henry Ford, and you can have any color you want as long as it's white. We do plan on coming out with other versions and colors and such like that, but we need to build up the momentum on the staple product first.
And I guess you use white because it's the strongest color. It's not dyed. It's more of a natural color. And as you dye a fabric, it loses strength, correct?
Dyeing it does affect the strength either way, but dyeing doesn't affect it as much as pigmentation. And pigmentation is a much less expensive coloring option. And so most of the stuff you see out there is probably pigmented. And, that's just a surface level thing. It's part of the coating normally.
Just on the surface.
Yeah, exactly. It penetrates a little bit, but it's not part of the actual material itself. Dyeing it, especially if you're going to use a decent dye that is going to perform well, is a much more expensive process. So, so we're considering both options. We're just trying to find the right mix, because we dialed this in for, we spent several years working on this version of our strap to make sure it was dialed in to provide the usability and the performance that was necessary for a hand-tied product as opposed to an industrial product. Because I don't know if I've mentioned it beforehand or during this, but it really matters. You have to formulate your strap and your securement method to work together. So on our industrial side, our woven is formulated to work with our phosphate buckles, and our composite is formulated to work with our galvanized buckles. And on this, we had to formulate it to work with tying by hand and tying onto all sorts of random objects.
Another benefit is, as well as I see, so if I was out rigging a climbing route, I was going to leave some webbing out in the weather, I would choose white, because it's going to resist the sun. But a darker color is going to absorb more heat from the sun, more UV rays, and degrade faster. So I can see that as being a benefit for the white as well.
Correct. The fewer ingredients that you put in there, the more we can concentrate on the actual secret sauce and quality of the product. And this is UV resistant. So you're not going to find almost any ropes or cordage out there that are naturally UV resistant or come UV resistant standard.
So
is it a nylon, or is it a polyester, or what is it?
It's a high strength polyester in a plastic coating that has the secret sauce in it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
The recipe that he's not going to share. if he told us, he'd have to kill us, and I don't want to be, you know what I mean?
It's not that important to me, as long as it works, right?
Exactly.
So let me ask a simple question. I try to keep it simple for those that may be having the same question. If I have a paracord, a 550 paracord, 550 means that it has 550 pounds of strength. Is that
breaking strength in one direction?
So comparatively, this is 2200. So is that compared? Would this be 4 times, like you said earlier, is 4 times stronger than 3 because of that? 550 times 4 is 2200.
Correct.
Is that am I doing the math correctly there?
There's 2 ways to look at strength. One is linear strength, is just end to end until it breaks. And so that's what you're talking about there. That's a very standard way to look at strength. But it also confuses a lot of people because they think they're using something that's going to be stronger than they actually are using. Because the way that people actually almost always use it is in loop form, joined with some sort of knot or securement method. And so those are 2 different strengths. And even on the industrial side, some of our competitors don't tell people the difference between the 2. They just say, oh, it's going to give you a 70% joint. Oh, with what buckle?
Yeah. So, or with what not?
What buckle? Yeah, that sort of thing. On the industrial side, nobody uses knots unless you're using really light duty, like 600 half-inch woven strap. Then people, they're not looking at it for the strength. They're just like, okay, I need something to wrap this. It's stronger than twine and rope. That's easier to tie. And it's actually kind of a prototype application for something like this, where they'll just hand tie it. But yes, anybody who's actually tying it into something is going to experience the system strength, which is tied with a knot.
So how much does that, it sounds like it depends is the answer, but I just kind of want to ask anyway. So if I if I tie it in a loop and I do it, something like that, does that reduce the strength significantly, or is it the knot obviously is, if you tie a knot in it and then you pull it just end to end like that, that's going to reduce the up to 50% that way. But if we loop it, and we use that, what is the strength differential there? What's the change?
Well, it can be up to 50%. So
well,
it depends on what you're doing. So in a loop, that's why you'll find people when they're really trying to haul something, they won't just go between like their truck and the log once. They'll go once, twice, 3 times, and then they'll tie their knot. And you'll notice that the knot has much less to do with this system than it did with the original one. So by going back and forth a few times, you're mitigating the effect that knot has on the whole situation. You still want to tie a good knot. And if you tie a good knot, it can give you a better joint. That means you'll have more of the actual strength of the strap transferring through to what you're trying to do. But it really does depend on how well you've tied that knot.
And there are some specific knots that work better with strap than they do with cordage.
Generally speaking, the same knots will work pretty much the same for both. There are some knots that'll work better than others, but the difference is not really enough to really look
I'm just kind of thinking in the climbing world, we've used different knots with flat webbing rather than climbing rope. But yeah, absolutely.
Flat webbing, even though it does have some similar properties to this, they pretty much end at the fact that they're both flat. And there are some component factors that make the way you tie them, it may affect the climbing rope a little more than it affects this.
Okay.
This does have a protective coating. Climbing rope is geared entirely towards keeping you safe on your climb. This is designed for how is it going to survive being dragged through mud and rocks in the pig pen.
Which, you never get your rope. You don't want your rope dragging through dirt and such. It's murder on a rope. Yeah.
Well, that's another thing that I've seen a lot of these guys that try to pull a stump out or something, and they'll use a rope and
ruin their climbing rope with it.
And it bounces back and it hits the. I've seen a lot of these guys try to pull a tree out with their truck, and they either lose the back axle or
their back window.
So with this, if you were to use this strap to pull something out of the ground like that, is it going to have that kind of spring where it can bounce back and hit their back window? Or
well, that's one of the advantages of lower elongation. The lower the elongation, the more direct impact it has on the material that is pulling. Anytime you're putting tension between two things, you are putting potential energy into that system, and that potential energy has to go somewhere. If the rope snaps and it flaps you, it's going to be, it's designed to not be a problem. That's why on the industrial side, it's become so big, is because if it pops, even when it has that buckle on it, it's not going to hurt you. It doesn't transfer enough of that energy into you. But the longer of a rope that you get, the more of that potential energy is tied up in that system. And so the potential dangers of all sorts of things start popping up. It's less than traditional options, but it's not, nothing that you're putting tension on is inherently not dangerous.
Good point.
Absolutely.
So if you were to pull a stump out of the ground, you would say, obviously you're biased, but would you say this would do a better job than a traditional round rope or tubular rope?
Absolutely. If you're going to pull something out of the stump out of the ground, and you were going to choose between a trucker's rope and this, I'd choose this. It has better impact resistance, lower elongation, and it's easier to put multiple links on the same stump.
Which is a great, another plug for the homesteader, because that's if we're doing homestead and stuff, pulling rocks or big tree stumps or old roots or stuff systems that are in there in the ground like that, this would be a great, sounds like a great way to do that without having, or a better way to do it than alternative ways. So that's
and
awesome.
It seems economical enough to where if you ruin it, no harm done, right? Where if I put an expensive climbing rope and try and yank something out, which I've seen friends pull their cars with climbing ropes, which that rope is toast at that point. You're retiring that rope. You're using it for your homestead activities after that, right?
I believe using it for a person would qualify as reckless endangerment.
Okay. After that, yeah,
absolutely, yep.
Yeah. So this is one of our taglines is actually inexpensive enough to dispose, but strong enough to reuse.
Cool.
Durable enough. And that's really the tactic we've taken on with this is about durability. It's all about how well it's going to survive what people are putting it through. And I know you showed it earlier, but that's one of our big things is the comparison chart. We actually show a whole bunch of the different, it's kind of reflecting there. So I'm not going to.
Let me show it on the website here.
Right. So
this shows paracord to redback, paracord, and truck rope.
Right. Trucker's rope is more of a traditional rope. It's the stronger version. The reason we picked that one is because it's generally around 2,200 pounds. So it's pretty much an apples to apples comparison when it comes to strength. So, it's compact, it's a lower profile, it's low elongation, which is what low stretch is. Easy to untie and tie is very self-explanatory. It's both of them are very tangle free. I personally really like the bucket because you can pull out as much as you need, cut it off and go. And then if you want to save the part you pulled up, you can roll it up just like you do with a 50-footer. There's a lot of different ways that it is just better than traditional ropes and paracord options. It's not going to replace your shoelace, but it's definitely going to, keep your cooler attached to your boat and pull a log out of the forest.
Yeah, one thing on your list, you show that it doesn't fray like other traditional rope. Like with paracord, you got to cut it, you got to melt it almost immediately, otherwise it starts to fray and it becomes a mess. And the same with any other kern mantle type rope where you have a core and you have a sheath, which is what paracord is. It has a core and it has a sheath. This has no core, has no sheath. It is all one. And I guess it being a polyester, it just doesn't fray and like the other nylon ropes do.
It's actually about our weave pattern and coating that helps it not fray. All of our material comes like this. It's just cut. We don't melt the ends. You'll notice on the one that you have there in the box, it's just cut so you can actually see all of the individual little fibers there. And if you try really hard, you can pick out the lock stitch and pull it down. And then all you have to do to relock it is just cut it below that point and you're good to go again. So it's very fray resistant. Whereas paracord, you just tug on it a little and it's spaghetti confetti. And with rope, if you leave it out, it's just going to naturally start to fray and come apart as the weather and temperature changes start affecting it. So this material, our heavier duty material, they even use that to bind buoys together in the Puget Sound. So it's resistant to some really harsh conditions.
That's really cool.
Very cool.
What are some other stories you've heard about how people have used this in the prepper or emergency preparedness? Do you have any first responders that have used it and with success? Or
I've had some first responders that are bringing it to their ops people. With that field, you really have to go through a huge, step-by-step process in order to get it approved for their kit. So it's in that process. We're less than a year, actually about 6 months with this being released. So it takes a couple of years to get it into first responder. But we do have people in military, even who sell on military bases taking a look at this. So everybody from farm stores to actual military personnel have been taking a look at this. A lot of the surplus stores have started bringing it in. The biggest application for preppers is twofold. The first one is really the obvious one. The 50-footer is an excellent addition to a bug out bag. The 200-footer really is something you put in your bug out location, the destination that you're going to be going to, because that's where it's going to be the most useful. It's going to be an emergency. Most people keep it on hand for emergency repairs, locking down fences, tying up areas. So, area denial, you can use it for everything from hauling a log to stringing up a clothesline. It's like there was one lady at the Homesteaders Convention that does these big, bulky, super beefy, homemade clothespins. And it's like we were talking with her about selling them as a pack, because then you have the world's most durable and intense clothesline that's ever been released.
That's awesome. Well, I want to go back to what you said earlier and just a minute ago, and you kind of just went by fast, but it's something we've been really trying to tell people. A bug out bag isn't a bag that you grab and just go wandering into the wilderness hoping that you'll find what you're doing or you'll survive at some point. Now, there's a couple of guys like my next door neighbor. He's a hunter. He can probably go out into the wilderness and just be okay because he can, hunt and dress animals, field dress, all that stuff.
He already has the knowledge.
But yeah, he has the knowledge and the skill sets to do that. But the average guy, you have what Josh just said. He says the 200 footer is for your bug out location, the place you're going to bug out to. That's the proper use of bug out and bug out terminology, is that if you're going to grab and go somewhere, you have to have a somewhere to go to. And that's excellent information. And, I'd probably get a 200. I got the 50 footer for my bag, and I'm probably going to grab the 200 footer at some point for my trailer. And then also for, I don't have a location yet other than Shane has graciously invited me that if crap does hit the fan, I can go to his homestead. So maybe I'll bring a couple ropes as part of my, what's it called? My entrance fee.
That's right. You got to bring your food storage too. So.
Right. Like if you want to, that's the rule, right, Shane? If you want to come to my bug out location, you got to
bring everything you need. Exactly. So before we started recording, Josh, we getting a little bit into the conspiracies and such, and we know you were at the expo just like a lot of other preppers. That's probably what drew you there, right? I mean, that's probably what drew you to start making this product as well. Is and what we're going to talk about in our next hour is kind of that we're kind of in the calm before the storm. So I wanted to get your take on where you think we're at right now as a country, as what's do you think is going to happen next? I mean, what do you see the world as right now? Pretty broad question, but just want to see where you're at as a prepper, right?
Okay, so my background is in economics, and I look at things as probabilities. And we are like a man on a cliff, and it doesn't matter which person pokes us and pushes us off the cliff. All it takes is a poke, and there's 1,000 of people ready to poke us, and they're all arguing about which person gets the opportunity to poke us. So from my perspective, I don't really see it as a question of if. It's just a question of who and when. Mm-hmm. And so I really think that it's recently on last week, I was really looking at the China situation, because one thing that did not make the news that should have been world news, completely, it should have been headlines, is that 2 Taiwanese warships and 2 Chinese warships exchanged live fire warning shots, and they exchanged it continuously for like 15-20 minutes, just firing away. And it's like any one of those shots would have hit, we would have been at war. Because while we don't have a mutual defense treaty with Taiwan, we do have a treaty that guarantees their independence as long as if China decides to militarily take over. So it's a way of having a mutual defense treaty without actually saying mutual defense treaty. Mm-hmm. It's, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Mm-hmm. So, and what happened was I immediately, within 24 hours, that's when Biden announced that they had signed the bill allowing for them to send
F-16
reservists over to Europe. And what they're calling, I think it was Atlantic Resolve, Operation Atlantic Resolve. So they've given it a name. They started sending people, calling reservists, not active duty, reservists up to send to Europe. And there's a whole bunch of developments that happened in Ukraine that make me really think that those Chinese are really helping them out. So my suspicion was that maybe the Chinese want to open up a front against Europe so that we're distracted and not able to help Taiwan as much when they decide to invade Taiwan. Mm-hmm. And maybe the president knows this, because we got satellites. We can see trains heading from China to, through Russia. So that's my uber conspiracy theory of the week. I'm not saying that is what's going on. I'm saying it, it's within the realm of possibilities. But
you're saying there's a million things behind the scenes that I didn't even hear about that.
yeah,
I listened to quite a bit, but I didn't even hear about that. But that's truly the case. That's incredibly serious. And I love your analogy. Again, going back to ropes. You're standing on the edge of a cliff. If I'm on the edge of a cliff, I'm not just standing on the edge of a cliff. I am roped off. I have a safety line to some anchor to where there's no chance for me to fall off that cliff. If I slip, I'm gonna stay on top of the cliff, right? That's what that safety line is for. And so this is a perfect analogy to actually talking about ropes, to have our own rope, to have our own security system that keeps us from falling off that cliff when everybody else is going to go over the edge because they're idiots.
right.
And not just because they're idiots, because it's on purpose. Right.
Yeah.
And I think you're on the same page there, it sounds like.
Well, that is one of the more interesting conspiracy theories right now. I think the most likely way for us to end up in a situation where prepping becomes the most useful is an economic collapse, because we have printed two times the previous currency levels over the past couple of years. So that means we have 300% of the currency we had before. So right now, you look at a grocery bill. I keep my own indexes, and my index says that we're at about 112% inflation. If we weren't the currency of exchange, we should have 200% inflation minimum. And that's not including most of the inflation that we've experienced this year. And so the only reason that that's not happening is because other countries are using the dollar as the currency of exchange and reserve currency, and they've obliterated their currencies even worse during the COVID situation and printed even worse than us. So they're sucking dollars out of our economy to bolster their economy, which means there's less dollars in the US economy, which means that there's less inflation. And so if we ever stop being the currency of exchange, all of those dollars and all the other dollars that have ever been sucked out of the country for that will come rushing back into the United States all at once. And most economists believe that that will result in between 500 and 1,200% inflation overnight, which no currency can survive. If that happens, the currency will just plummet to zero right away. It won't just be, your dollar's now worth 10 cents. Yeah. It's your dollar's worth nothing.
And what that means is that all these people in these countries that hold dollars are going to look for a place to spend them. They're going to spend them like crazy as quickly as they can. And that's what's going to cause inflation for the hens coming home to roost, as they say.
Right.
Yep. Right. And with the CBDC announcement for July, and then the BRICS announcement coming up next month, is they're setting up the stage for the play to play out. So just that's one more reason to stay alert and to stay aware. We're gonna I think we're about ready to in the last couple of minutes of our show. Any last minute pieces of wisdom, Josh, you want to share about either Redback strap or about what's going on with the economy, or anything else you want to share?
Or what you advise people to do now? Yeah. Obviously, I say get what you need now.
Right. Get what you need, and also get hard assets, because property is always going to be valuable, even if the currency collapses and goes to nothing. Food is always going to be valuable. Don't be one of the people who thinks that they're going to survive entirely off of bullets. Those are the people who are going to starve, and people are going to defend themselves when they try to use those bullets to get the means of survival that they want. Those are the people who are going to end up being the savages roaming the wasteland, trying to get food, and everybody doesn't have a problem killing them. So if you want to survive what's coming, diversify, and also work on your headspace. Like we were talking earlier, it doesn't matter if you have all the gear in the world if you don't know how to use it, or if you're too out of shape to use it. I made a meme a couple of months ago where it's like other people, it was the Breaking Bad meme where you work out to look good, I work out to survive the coming apocalypse. We are not the same. So it's like, I'm not going to the gyms to look good. I'm happily married. I got kiddos. I'm going to the gym so I can survive. That's why I'm going.
Absolutely. That is critical. That is critical. Well, Josh, thanks so much for being on the show. Thanks for being with us and spending a few minutes. In fact, based on what you just said in the last 5 minutes or so, I'm going to petition to have you back on, and we'll talk about just that stuff for the 45 minutes or so.
I do have my own YouTube channel where I talk about things like CBDC, mega corporations, and things like that.
Cool.
Oh yeah,
what's your channel?
What it is. Promote it right now.
It's Retro Spectator. Spelled just like retro as in looking behind you, and spectator as in watching.
Got it. We'll put that in the description below. So go check out Josh's YouTube channel. Get up to date. This is the kind of people that we want to be listening to. We want to be hearing from, because they've got the perspective of the prepper, of the awake, not woke, awake. And aware of what's going on in the world, so that we can stay frosty, stay ready, keep our head on a swivel. So once again, you've been listening to Prepper Talk Radio, radio for the ready-minded, and where we focus on God, family, and country. And today we've learned about ropes, and we've learned about where Josh thinks we are in the economy. And I'm telling you right now, without getting into too much of it, Shane and I agree with Josh. So get ready, get prepared, because it's coming. It's not a matter, as Josh said, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So without further ado, thanks so much for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate your time.